Electrocast.
Why wait to see if you'll get something you like this Valentine's Day when you can go to BlueNile.com and find something you'll love? Whether you're looking to treat yourself to a little winter sparkle or show a galentine how much you appreciate them, Blue Nile offers a wide selection of high-quality designs, expert guidance, and free 30-day returns for the ultimate peace of mind. You can even design your own jewelry. Right now, save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
How we doing, everyone? And welcome back to part 2 of the first ever episode of the New England Championship ReWrap. Jump back in our time machine as we rejoin the 2001 New England Patriots in their improbable championship season. When we had last left off, we have just wrapped up the AFC Championship game victory versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, Drew Bledsoe's heroics, and officially crowned him Mr. Patriot. Now, it's the moment we've all been waiting for, Super Bowl 36.
Can we talk real quick about how the Patriots received the Lamar Hunt trophy on Heinz Field?
It's a beautiful thing.
At the middle of Heinz Field, the Pittsburgh Steelers are already in the locker room. The stadium is empty. All you can see are yellow seats, and the Patriots are lifting the Lamar Hunt trophy, going to New Orleans to play who we eventually would find out would be the St. Louis Rams. I mean, it just blows my mind looking back on it again that that's what happened. You beat the Raiders. Now you beat the Steelers. You're about to go against the best team, the greatest show on turf, the best team in the NFL in the Super Bowl, the way it should be.
Right. And before we get into the Super Bowl, I do kind of want to touch on Rams coming into the NFC Championship game. They struggle. They beat the Eagles 29-24. It's a great game, and it kind of showed those holes in the armor for that greatest show on turf. Showed us that we actually can beat this Rams team who we played great against back in Week 10.
Well, this is the greatest thing about this is this was great film for Bill Belichick. Like, that's what this was incredible film for this team. I mean, you look at an Eagles team that was coached, his quarterback.
First of 3?
Donovan McNabb, his running back is Deuce Staley. I mean, we're looking at we're looking at a fast team, like a fast team. Yeah. The Patriots were not a fast offense. The Patriots, I mean, you look at the wide receiving core, Brian Westbrook, you look at their core in 2001, that's the Patriots core. I mean, Tom Brady couldn't move. I mean, you had some good running backs, but we weren't fast. We weren't going to blow anybody out of the water.
The 1980s NFL typical team. That's how they won.
Absolutely. With defense and a kill you by watching paint dry kind of offense. So that was their style. And the Eagles were not that kind of team. The Eagles were the complete opposite. I mean, they had a fast team. They had a mobile quarterback. I mean, they had a great offense too. They weren't quite the Rams, as we find out. But you're right, Bobby. I mean, this is where the holes in the Rams' armor was found. Where can you beat them? Because you're going to find them when they're playing a fast team, and that's what they did. So, I mean, I look back at this Eagles team. That Eagles team was, man, were they good? I mean,
they were good.
They went to championship games four years in a row following that. Yeah.
And I mean, what amazes me here is, I mean, you talk about the greatest show on turf, and at that time, the offense in the NFL was great. Yeah, offense was awesome, but defense was king. I mean, defense is how championships were won back then. It's not the same anymore, but I mean, the Ravens, the Rams even had a good defense in 1999 when they won the Super Bowl. But I mean, now we're looking at a great offensive team coming in, and what did the Patriots do well? What did we do well? I mean, sure, we scored points. We killed you with kindness, for lack of a better term. And the defense was good, but this again, I said it once already, but this film is exactly what Bill Belichick needed to figure out how to beat the Rams.
And he figured it out, didn't he?
He sure did. Did he? Let's find out.
All right, so we'll go on to the Super Bowl here. So first story that I want to talk about in the Super Bowl. The first thing that sticks out to me is how cool and collected Tom Brady was. Coming into this game, so the talk coming into this game after the AFC Championship game where Drew Bledsoe led us was, who's it going to be, Drew or Tom? Drew or Tom? Drew or Tom? Bill chose Tom, because guess what? That's how they got there.
Yeah, I remember that press conference. And that's exactly what he did, because everybody questioned him after Pittsburgh and said, well, what are you going to do? I mean, Drew Bledsoe basically came in and won you that game. Are you going to go to Tom, or are you going to stick with Drew? Because that's what it was at that point, because Drew Bledsoe should have been the starter, right? Because Brady still hobbled on that knee. Thank goodness there was 2 weeks off, but you're right. It was Tom.
And that was the whole talk. And almost as if he proved Belichick right before even going into the game. This dude was so confident and so ready for this game that he took a damn nap in the locker room. And not only that, he didn't even realize he fell asleep. That's how calm and collected this dude was, where he blinked and all of a sudden it was 20 minutes later and he's like, oh, damn, I gotta go play in the Super Bowl. Like,
we
who
heard
does
about
that?
In the stands. Like, we had people listening to the radios. Like, I listened to the radio feed because that's kind of what they gave out as one of the gifts in the stadium. So you're listening to this and you're like, it's kind of mixed emotions in a way, because half the Patriots fans are like, oh man, our quarterback just fell asleep before the biggest game of his life. And the other half is like, dude, this guy is so ready to go that he's taking naps. Like,
that's how I felt at the time. When I heard he took that nap, I was like, dude, let's go. Let's go. And then, as if that wasn't enough of a let's go moment, introductions happened. Now, coming up to this, the Super Bowl introductions for my childhood were some of the coolest memories ever. Seeing everyone get introduced player by player, you know what I mean? It was so cool because it was the beginning of the Super Bowl. No one even knew about what was about to happen. All of a sudden,
to be introduced as a team, please welcome the AFC champions, the New England Patriots.
And at that moment, this was just different. This was going to be a different game. This was a different team. This was a team that had an aura about them that we've never seen before. And they not only did this, they went against the NFL protocols and wishes. And I don't know if it's a fact, but I heard they even got fined for doing this.
They did, but they started a trend.
Right, and now ever since, that's what it's been. Yeah, but at that moment, that's again another, oh my God, we're going to do this. But we're actually going to win the Super Bowl.
That was a speak softly, carry a big stick moment, because I remember turning to my father and putting my hands on his shoulders like, this is over. Like, we got this. Like, this is done. Like, it's over. Because it was after the Rams had been introduced individually. And that was kind of the best part, was that it was a kind of an FU moment to Mike Martz and the Rams. Like, all right, buddy, here you go. I mean, because they were already booking their flights off to, wherever the heck they were going to go. They had already booked their parade. I mean, they had already scheduled it in St. Louis. Joke's on you guys. Fast forward 20 years. But I mean, they scheduled all that. They was the same thing as Pittsburgh. They were ready to go, man.
This was also the moment, like you guys just said, but there's not one player on this team that is more important than the team. Like, if it's not drilled into your head as a Patriots fan now, like, this is where
that was it. Yeah.
Which I never understand how that MO didn't catch on with more coaches and more teams and more sports. Yeah. I really never understand how that didn't catch on, because it clearly worked. And we've seen so many times, even on the Patriots, we've seen it so many times where somebody thinks they're bigger than the team, and that's where things fall apart. Teams haven't won in the entirety of people's history with the team because of their ego. I never understood that.
A little lighthearted moment I want to toss in before we get into the actual game. In the tunnel before the game, one of the funniest clips I've ever seen is Tom Brady headbutting the absolute crap out of Drew Bledsoe 5 straight times, just going, I told you I was going to get you here. I told you I was going to. First of all, hilarious. Second of all, kind of a dick move.
I don't think so.
So if you think about it, right? So Drew Bledsoe just got them in the AFC Championship game. Drew Bledsoe wanted to start that Super Bowl. He thought that he was one of the main reasons they got there because of that AFC Championship game. There's interviews where they ask him, are you mad you're not starting in the Super Bowl? And he flat out says, yeah, I really want to start this game. However, it's about the team. Then he went into the Patriot spiel that we all know and love. At that moment, if I was Bledsoe, I'd be like, bro, I want to play too. What do you mean?
But in that moment, you can't. And that's why it's one of those moments in time in all of our lives where emotion takes over. And Tom Brady was he was a kid. I mean, we all have, whether it's kids or nieces and nephews or little cousins or whatever it is, and you think about how they handle situations where they get excited. And that is kind of what it was between Bledsoe and Brady. It was just him getting excited. And it might have been a dick move, and it might have been something, but I think what he was saying is when Drew Bledsoe got smoked by Mo Lewis, I mean, Brady was his understudy. Brady was under his wing. And I think what he means about that is, man, I told you back in week X that I would get you here. And now we're here, and I'm fired the F up. Let's go win this game. I think that's where it stems from. I don't think it was at that point where it was like, I told you 2 days ago I would get you here. Like that's not what it was by any means.
I also think that I think as a quarterback, your nature is to try and put the spotlight on yourself, right? And say yeah, of course I want to play this game, but I think Bledsoe had already bought into the Patriot way because he wanted to play, but I've scoured the internet for reports. He never went to Bill and advocated for him to play. No. He knew that Bill was going to make whatever decision he needed to make, and he was just going to play his role in it. And if you in that clip, if you watch it, Bledsoe's slapping the hell out of Brady.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
he's smiling.
Maybe that was his retaliation.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was a jerk move for him, or as you said, a dick move. It's just that bravado. Look, we were the quarterbacks of this team. One of our guys went down. I was there to pick you up. I fell down. You were there to pick me up.
Yep.
It's time. February 3rd, 2002. It's our time. It's our night. Let's bring it home.
There maybe at the time, Tom Brady was being a dick. And maybe Drew Bledsoe took it that way. I mean, it's possible that one of them was thinking that way. It is, but I mean, this is our opinions 20 years later. But you're right. That was one of the greatest moments. And I have 4 lighthearted moments. So the first one is now my father and I drove to New Orleans. We stayed in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, 100 miles away from New Orleans. Hattiesburg, Mississippi, the home Brett Favre.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. So to give you a picture here, man. I mean, I don't know if any of you have been to New Orleans. Right, it's an amazing place, isn't it? When you drive into New Orleans and you're driving on I-10 and all you see is high rises and you take this one bend on the highway and all of a sudden you see this giant cement dome. And it is magical. It really is magical. And so we pull into New Orleans. We're about 3 or 4 blocks from the stadium, and we pull up in front of this pawn shop, and there's these 2 guys sitting outside, Michael and Marshall, and I'll never forget their names, and I'll never forget who they were. Michael had this curly, scraggly hairdo. He had a polo shirt on, and Marshall was this big dude just sitting in a chair, had a black shirt with gold embroidered playing cards on his shirt. And we pulled in and they come over and my father looks at him and goes, "How much?" And he goes, "You guys coming for the game?" And we said, "Yep." He goes, $5 to park for the Super Bowl, $5. And my dad goes, "Are you kidding me?" And Michael looks at him and goes, "Why? Is that too much?" He goes, "No, man, in Foxborough, we pay $30 a game." He goes, "Oh, no, forget that." He goes, $5, and I'll even watch it extra for you. We'll be here when you come out from the game. We'll be here all day. We'll watch your truck for you. Sweet. Day goes on. We go to the NFL Experience. We come back, and there's a camper parked next to us. The guys aren't there at the time, but they come back about 5 minutes later, and we find out that they're from the surrounding towns from where Craig and I are from. And the guy is the manager of a hotel in the town. And So we start catching on with them, and we were parked right across the street from St. Joseph's Church in New Orleans. Beautiful church. And at one point, one of the fathers is walking up the front steps to the church. And one of the guys that we were parked next to in the camper, who's 3 sheets to the wind, but at 13 years old, I didn't know it. He goes, he just yells at him, and he goes, "Father, say a prayer for our boys today." He turns around, opens his robe, and he's wearing a Lawyer Malloy jersey. Closes it, turns around, and walks up the stairs and walks into the church. The moments in this game were just absolutely incredible. And the last one I'll share before we get into the game was we're walking up to the stadium to go in. Again, I'm 13 years old, but I had a beard at that time and looked like I was 18. So we're walking up to the stadium, and there's a beer vendor there, older guy. And he looks at my father, and my dad says, "Yeah, we'll grab a beer." He looks at my dad. He looks at me. He looks back at my father and goes, "2?" No, my dad was like, "No, he's got about 7 years left," and those were 3 of the. It was just the moments in this place it was just incredible. And for anybody listening, or you guys, whether it's the team you root for or not, go to a Super Bowl. Just go to a Super Bowl. I mean, it's it's unlike anything. I mean, I've been to World Series games. I've been
next year.
Yeah, right. I've been to World Series games. They don't even compare to the Super Bowl. Nothing does.
So that's that 2 things. I'm with you, Joe. If there's one sporting event in my life that it's on my bucket list, it's going to the Super Bowl. So much so that Katie has promised me that if the Cowboys ever make the Super Bowl, now I know that is a pretty big if, we're going. And there's no doubts about that. We're going to figure it out because of exactly what you just said. And especially, kind of be relatable to exactly what we're talking about now, where this team had no chance to go to the Super Bowl. And here you were in New Orleans, ready for the biggest game that you've ever watched, ever experienced, they've ever played in, and ever experienced in their entire lives. And honestly, it didn't start out that great. From kickoff, if I remember correctly, Yo Murphy takes that ball back to about the Patriots 40-yard line on the opening kick, and that kind of gave me a feeling right at the beginning of like, oh Lord, here we go. Like, it took away all those first 10 minutes of them being introduced, everything that happened with Brady. Yo Murphy returns that, and I feel like, in my opinion, that momentum got sucked out of the building. Now, I don't know if that's how it felt in person.
It started right there. You're absolutely right. He brought it back to the Patriots 40-yard line, but at the same time, that drive ended in a Jeff Wilkins 50-yard field goal. So the Patriots defense did hold them there, and that's where we go. And I mean, things change a little bit there, and I'm kind of looking at this right now and thinking, I wish I was old enough to bet on this game. Not only was the line minus 14 for the Rams, but the over-under was 52.5.
Yeah.
Damn.
That would have been a great game to bet on. But yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you. I mean, it was definitely momentum, because you're right. It was like, damn, the Rams, I mean, from the go, like, they were ready. Like, they're not as embarrassed as we maybe thought they were as when we came out as a team. Mike Martz corrected the ship, but luckily it was only 3-0, but it only took 3 minutes.
Right, and then from there, that was the last points the Rams did score until the second half, because what we talked about in length before we got into this game, that game plan and that scheme that Bill Belichick made was completely different from that Week 10 game where, he didn't necessarily go after Warner. He let the cornerbacks that he had, those physical great cornerbacks, do most of the work on those wide receivers. Now, I'll never forget seeing the Patriots on every single play, jamming those wide receivers and not letting them get into any of their routes. They took the speed away from the Rams unlike any team ever had.
Just to your point, Bobby, instead of going after Kurt Warner, they went after Marshall Faulk. Marshall Faulk for that game had I think 17 attempts for 76 yards. That is one of the greatest running backs of all time in one of the most high-profile situations. And they completely Bill knew that the offense didn't really run through Kurt. It ran through Marshall Faulk.
And that will come back to bite them later, which we'll get to.
That's kind of where that's the beginning of where we saw the blueprint for how a Bill Belichick-led defense is. So he's going to take away your best option or maybe your best two options, right? So, he knew coming in, you can't maybe take away Holt, Bruce, Proehl, Isaiah Hakeem, but if you take away 28, who's the focal point, like he makes them go, if we minimize his impact in the game, then we have a legitimate shot to win the game. So in doing that, it was like, okay, cool. We minimize Marshall's impact. Now we live with what we do on the outside. The rules will really change because of how the Patriots were jamming quarterbacks. I mean, Ty Law was brutal. Otis Smith was brutal. Bucky Jones, Ronnie Harrison, when he got there, like they really changed the rules because of how physical those New England corners were, because they wanted more of a free flowing game. But
the rules
thank God
because
it wasn't
of this game.
Exactly.
Antowain Smith outrushed Marshall Faulk.
Said
just let that sink in.
Only game ever.
And that wasn't Buffalo Bill Antowain Smith either. I mean, he had some good years there, but he wasn't that guy. I think he had like 1,157 yards for us. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was 1130 something.
Yeah,
but
either way, he was a 1,000-yard rusher, but he wasn't that guy when New England he was in Buffalo, obviously. So, for that to happen, like you said, Mike, that speaks volumes. And like I said, thank God we were able to minimize the impact that Marshall Faulk had on that game.
So one correction I want to make to our first half is that kick return by Yo Murphy actually ended in a punt. And the Rams scored on their second drive. But it's actually interesting because that brings us to a good point, going literally off of what Rayshawn just said, is that in the first half, actually Rayshawn and Mike just said, in the first half, these are the drives for the St. Louis Rams. Punt, field goal, missed field goal, interception, pick six, fumble, end of half. I mean, you guys are absolutely right. Bill Belichick figured it out and knew exactly what to do. Now Mike Martz makes some changes, but
and I'm pretty sure on that Kurt Warner fumble, he was out. Like he was knocked out.
Oh yeah.
They knocked him out. Him out. I'm pretty sure they knocked him out. Yeah. I forget which coach was saying it. Wasn't that Pepper Johnson on the sideline, right? They knocked him out. But you get to that. So that first half was the story of the Patriots against the Rams that season. You remember that first game? They turned Kurt Warner over 3 times in the first half, all right? So we get back to, us pressuring, us not blitzing Warner all game until one play. We throw a blitz for the first time all game. Willie McGinnis, coming off like a bat out of hell off the right side of that line, forces the first score for the Patriots in the 2001 Super Bowl. A Ty Law interception for a touchdown that is probably the most photogenic and most amazing pick six I've ever seen in my entire life.
Running down the sideline with his hand in the air, just
and me and my
you can see his face just. Yep.
It's one of the greatest moments in New England Patriots Super Bowl history.
No,
and that's what
overall.
And this is you're right overall. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is one of those things, one of those points where I really want to drive home to those that are listening, to the older fans that have been around since the 70s, the 80s, the 60s. I mean, if you're listening to this, I hope my father listens to this and gets to run through this season and this game with us again. Like, this is where it literally all started. So if you're a 16-year-old Patriots fan, if you're a 20-year-old Patriots fan, if you're a 30-year-old Patriots fan that didn't start following until, Tom Brady was elite, this is where this literally all started. And the emotion in our voices, even Bobby's voice, who decided to jump ship for the Midwest back whatever day it was, this is literally where this started. I mean, the Patriots don't have 03, 04. They don't lose in 07 to the Giants. They don't lose in 11 to the Giants. They don't there's no Butler interception against the Seahawks. There's no 25-point comeback. There's none of that without this season right here. And that's why there's so much emotion behind this season, this game, the 199th draft pick in 2000, a compensatory pick in the 6th round. Like, if you ever wonder why some people get on fans in New England about only being a fan because of Tom Brady or jumping ship because he went to Tampa Bay, it's this season right here. Like, this cemented everything that happened over the last 20 years. And that touchdown, you heard Ray, how excited Rayshawn and I just got at that interception by Ty Law. I mean, that is one of that. You know what? I'm going with what Rayshawn said. That's the greatest moment in Patriots Super Bowl history. I mean, that's it right there. I mean, that gave the Patriots a lead. That gave the Patriots a lead in the Super Bowl, and they had never led in a Super Bowl. They'd been to 2 before this, and they had never led in the Super Bowl, and they were up 7-3 against the greatest show on turf in Super Bowl 36, a game that the Raiders didn't think they would get to, that the Steelers didn't think they would get to, that the St. Louis Rams already had their boats. They don't have duck boats. Whatever the heck they drive in St. Louis, their Cutlass Supremes ready to go down Main Street, St. Louis. Like, they were ready to go, and the Patriots are up 7-3 on this team.
Right, which is kind of why, it's funny that this podcast has been this long because, like, honestly, it makes sense that it is because this is the one that set everything up. Like we keep saying that became a trend going forward. That became this going forward because this was the beginning of what became the best Boston sports era ever, possibly the best sports era for any city that ever existed. This specific play that set that off.
It may not have affected what happened for the Red Sox over the last 20 years or the Celtics or the Bruins. It may not have affected any of those things. All of those championships may still have happened. We will never know. Without this game, it doesn't start.
I think it did affect those teams because it set up a mindset that was different among Boston sports. Boston sports up until this point was the losers. We were the Chicago. We were Cleveland. We were the losers of the country. We were known for blowing games. That's what we did. Besides the Celtics in the 80s, all right?
Well, but the Celtics in the 90s were
even from the late 80s until this point, we were the laughing stock of the sports world. Time and time again, we were the butt of the joke in the biggest market, right? And this season changed all of that, which is why it's just so significant. Why we can't stop this podcast short. Why we have to touch on all these things because of how important this season and this championship really was.
That's why we have Craig. Really?
Can we touch on how the half ended? Because I think that was kind of like an ode to Drew Bledsoe.
Oh, 100%.
That exact same throw that happened in Pittsburgh from Drew to David Patton happened again.
Almost like it was almost like they did a recap of it because it was literally in the same throw. It was the same throw, same dime, same spot, everything.
Bill loved to do this. Bill loves to do this now, but he loved to do it then. If we're staying in the time capsule, Bill loved to do that, and he was not afraid to take the same play. It's like Herman Boone said in Remember the Titans. It's like Novocaine. You keep running it until it works, and that's exactly what he did. And he kept running the same play because Bill has always been one not to turn his nose up at other coaches, but be like,
he turns his nose up. He turns his nose up.
I can outcoach you, and I can get my guys to outplay your guys no matter who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the Patriots score with 31 seconds left in the second half, and they're up 14-3 on the St. Louis Rams at halftime. Amazing.
And not a bad stat line. David Patton had 1 catch for 8 yards, 1 touchdown in the Super Bowl, and it was arguably the second greatest catch of his career, but probably the most important catch of his career.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. Because St. Louis was able to score so much, I was like, dog, like 14 is not going to cut it. Like I just kept saying that. I'm like, 14 is not going to cut it. Like unless we find we get another pick six from somebody, like 14 will not cut it against this team. Like I feel like Marshall's going to get loose. Somebody is going to get behind the defense, and they're going to end up scoring at some point. We're saying I'm doing it later on, but my heart was still like through my chest.
It wasn't over. So, it wasn't because at that point it was never over until the clock hit zeros.
Right. Exactly.
Just remember what Ricky Proehl said that night. Tonight, a dynasty starts.
I do
That's
remember
a direct
that.
quote.
So weird.
That's a
That is a direct quote. Yeah. Well, in the
He found out 2 years later too, but
fair enough. And also to think about another great soundbite from Pepper Johnson after that Ty Law interception. What is he saying to that defense as it comes off the field? Get your rests. Get your rests. Get your rest, because everyone knew in America that these Rams weren't going quietly.
Pepper Johnson's so good. Like that.
He really was.
He's so good. Like he knew what to say at the right time. I mean, that coaching staff, and I know we're only at halftime, but man, that coaching staff that Bill assembled. I mean, you got one of the best defensive coordinators in the history of the game in Romeo Crennel, kind of a cruddy head coach, but I mean, the guy's still around. He's still doing it. You got Charlie Weiss on the offensive side, Pepper Johnson, Bill Belichick. I mean, man, that coaching staff was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. We go to the halftime. One of the best halftime shows that have ever happened in Super Bowl history. I know we're way over, but Joe, I gotta know, man. I've never talked to anyone who saw that thing in person. Never in my entire life, and I don't think we've ever talked about this, to be honest.
What was it
like?
It set the stage, literally, for what every halftime show has been since then. I mean, you had some great halftime shows before that, right? We had Michael Jackson. I mean, there's been some great halftime shows prior to that Super Bowl, but U2 was the biggest thing at the time in music. They weren't even an American band, but they came out and they blew the roof off the Superdome, for lack of a better term. I mean, they really did. They knew exactly what they were doing and what they needed to do at that time as a musical artist doing the Super Bowl, and it really was just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
I couldn't imagine how emotional that building must have been. There couldn't have been
let me
a dry eye in the stands.
This is totally corny, totally cheesy, but I have to ask this. So, can you say it was a beautiful day?
Hey.
You know, because the Patriots
ended up being a bloody Sunday too.
Because the Patriots didn't let it get away.
Guys, that was great. That was three straight YouTube puns, which is something I never thought would happen on the SNSW podcast.
Now I have
on
vertigo.
the first episode.
What do you expect before white guys?
5.
Also, like I can't imagine what it was like, not only to hear them, but to see the names of all of those that were lost on 9/11.
Yeah,
right.
Just going up and down that screen, like again, 9/11 was a big thing, not only for the country, obviously, but in sports that year, and for the Patriots in particular. Like it just felt like everything was going in the direction of the underdog, of the red, white, and blue winning. But I do just want to give a shout out to the St. Louis Rams, because typically when you hear of a team that is so offensively focused, when they're down 2 scores, they quit. This team didn't. They actually had grit, and they fought back.
Well, I mean, it was a time in football where teams didn't – it was just such a different time. Like, it really was. And it's amazing to think about it like that, how much the game has evolved and changed. I mean, it may have devolved in some areas, but the way the game has changed. And, I mean, just to wrap up the halftime show, I mean, I not that I forgot, but that's a detail that it's like the stage – the American flag, the names, I mean, and you got to imagine there's people in that stadium that knew people that were affected by, killed by, I mean.
On the Patriots sideline, man, Joe in Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, way off topic, but, you know, at the time, my aunt was working in Manhattan, and on September 11th, when we all got released from school, because I'm sure it happened to all of you, you know, I got home and I called her because I knew she worked in Manhattan. Thankfully, she worked in North Manhattan, and she answered her phone, which I thought was amazing because at the time it was cell phones and cell phone towers were very different. And I asked her how she was and if she was okay. And she said, "I'm drinking my coffee, watching it happen out my window." And it was just powerful. Wow. And it culminates to the Super Bowl. And, you know, maybe something will happen sports related when what we're going through now is all over, or gets to a point where we can have people in the stands again. But this halftime show, I think Mike has said it better than any of us will be able to. It's just that the way the Patriots handled themselves all season and how this lent itself to what the country needed at the time, it was very healing.
It was.
And not saying that as a Patriots fan, saying that as a fan of sports, we needed something to bring us together because there were so many people dealing with things that were a nightmare that I would never want to deal with. I mean, Joe Andrews's three brothers were New York firefighters. They saw things that I would never wish to see or wish on my worst enemy to see. Okay. And this game, that halftime show, brought everybody together. And at that point in time, the score is 14-3. The New England Patriots are on top. And it didn't matter what jersey you were wearing in the stands. It didn't matter who you rooted for. It didn't matter where you were from or what you looked like. All that mattered was that you were an American watching the greatest game ever. And it was a lot of, I know this is going to sound weird, but it was a lot of fun because it was something that everybody needed. And now looking back on it, when we've had other tragedies happen in our lives, this is still probably one of the biggest volume wise. And it was just, it just, at that point, it's good that the players weren't out there because playing football after it was kind of like, crap. All right, now we got to get.
And that's it kind of set that up for that second half where in my head, I mean, we were really young at this point. So like, I didn't completely understand how much of an emotional and real moment that really was. Like, I'm sure if we were this age now and we saw that, every single one of us would be sitting there like, I'm not crying. I swear to God, I'm not crying. There's a lump in my throat. I don't know. But that's the Patriots were affected by the tragedy more personally than any team in the NFL. Like you said, Joe Andrewsy, three of his brothers were in the towers. They were firefighters. So this kind of set up that like this really was a team of destiny, which brings us right into the second half. So the second half starts, and you can tell right from the beginning that it wasn't the same feel as it did have in that first half. The Patriots weren't as dominant. The Rams were moving the ball a lot more efficiently. I was watching it today. Warner, this was before he got hit and was throwing ducks for the rest of the game. He had some zip on the ball at the beginning of that second half. But then what looked like the clinching moment of the Patriots Super Bowl happens. Rams are driving down the field. It looks like they're about to score to make it 14-3. If Rams score 14-10, all of a sudden Warner rushes out to the right. He kind of looks like Drew Bledsoe on the play, funny enough. Rushes out to the right, and the ball just pops out. I don't know if anyone really forced it. It just kind of popped out to Bucky Jones, I believe, grabs the ball, takes it all the way to the other end of the end zone, and it looks like the Patriots are about to be Super Bowl champions. And there's a flag on the play. Awful. Willie McGinnis, one of the greatest Patriots of our lifetime, and one of the most known Patriots to me at this point, I don't want to say they've been doing it all game. So I don't want to say it wasn't necessary because guess what? That was their game plan. That's what they've been doing all game long, is beating up Marshall Faulk. Not only that, but it was the most unnecessary holding call in the history of the NFL. It was 15 yards away from the play. Didn't need to be called. It was.
Well, which is why you have to call it, because you don't have to do it if it's 15 yards away from the play. Like that was such an egregious thing to do.
Right.
And it was such a mental mistake for a guy that would that
doesn't
didn't make them
mistakes,
and then later on would actually be playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers by maybe faking an injury. We'll get into that when we get into like the 2004 time capsule. But this guy, I mean, he owned it too. He said like that's on me. Like don't worry. Like, and the momentum did change, and even as the game started kind of to unfold, you still never thought that the Patriots defense was going to let it slip away.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there was an uneasy feeling because this was the greatest show on turf. These are the Patriots. This is the Boston team up until that point. Boston was known for getting there and just gagging on it, just choking. So how are they going to do it this time? But I remember vividly, like, my hands over my head just like this going, this can't
Here we
happen.
go. Here we go. Right?
I can't do it.
And and I couldn't agree more. That moment changed everything.
Vinatieri kicks a 37-yard field goal with a $1:22 left in the third quarter. But I was just going to say this, and Bobby, if I can real quick, this is one of the moments for me where, as Mike said, it didn't look like the Patriots defense was going to let it slip away, but as you were just going to say, Bobby, it kind of slips away a little bit because Vinatieri kicks that field goal 17-3. Even at that point, you're like, man, we got a 2-touchdown lead. Like this,
we're good.
This is it, man. Like, all right, so that touchdown got called back, like fine. But even that field goal at the time didn't feel right. Yeah, it didn't feel like it was. It felt okay, but it didn't feel like it was enough. And then there's this next drive, and the Rams just, pound it down the Patriots' throat here. We're talking about a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 play drive.
Yeah, it was methodical. They went down the field.
It was. And not only this, here's another great point to throw in here. The Patriots called their second timeout of the half during this drive. The play before the touchdown was scored, the Patriots called their second timeout of the second half. We're talking about now they're only up 6 after the extra point, but now they only have one timeout.
And that feeling that they weren't going to blow this completely went away to me. At that moment when they called that timeout and then the Rams scored on the next play, in my head, I was like, there's no chance. There's no chance we can hold on to this game. The momentum was so far in the Rams' favor at that point that there was just no chance this was happening. Even with Kurt Warner throwing the ugliest passes because he had no thumb left. This dude was throwing ducks around that field. I was rewatching it. Every pass he threw looked like one of us trying to throw an NFL football. Somehow they still went 16 plays right down the field and picked apart this defense like it was nothing.
I just remember being so pissed off when Kurt Warner ran right up the middle and scored that touchdown. 2 yards. Yep. I was like, this is not happening. You can't let that guy run and score. And to cap off that drive, that was why they were the greatest show on turf. They could pick apart any defense at any point in time that they wanted to, but typically they did it for 4 quarters. Luckily for us, they could only do it for one. But can you imagine being down 14 points in the Super Bowl and having the confidence that they probably did on offense, saying, we still got this.
That goes back to another soundbite in the Americas game. I don't know who it was. There was a bench player. He didn't even have pads on. He wasn't even dressed for the game. But they keep going back to him, and he keeps going, I like our chances. I told you I like our chances. We are the greatest show on turf. I like our chances. And that was the confidence that the Rams had. Because up until that point, no one could stop them once they got going.
So Bobby, I'm not discounting anything you've said to this point or changing the emotion of it, but I actually think this amplifies what you said about that Kurt Warner fumble that was called back on the penalty by Willie McGinnis. The Patriots were up 17-3 when that happened. Mm-hmm. So the Vinatieri field goal came first. And then
it would have been 24-3.
And it was during that 16-play drive. Kurt Warner right end, no gain, tackled by Roman Pfeiffer. Kurt Warner fumbles, forced by Roman Pfeiffer, recovered by Tabucky Jones at New England 3, returned 97 yards for a touchdown, holding Willie McGinnis. And then what Mike just said happens is Kurt Warner says, I'll take this, and runs right up the middle, not touched, touchdown. Now it's 17-10, completely different ballgame. If that doesn't get called back, like you said, it's 24-3.
It's over.
Ballgame's over. That's over. We're going home.
It really, and I remember, so I'll never forget where I was for this. I was with my dad at a Super Bowl party with a bunch of about 45 to 50-year-olds, right? So I'm the only 13-year-old there. I have never heard more cursing in my entire life than when Willie McGinnis got that holding call. It was this. I can't believe it was unbelievable because exactly like you said, the sales just went right out. So a little bit later in the fourth quarter, Rams drive right back down the field again. And there was no stopping them at this point. I know the Patriots did have a couple drives in between there. Joe, you have the stats up right in front of you. But I know they had a couple drives that looked all right, flamed out.
So here's the problem with that next drive is the Patriots ended up having a punt on their ensuing drive after the Kurt Warner touchdown. It's a 53-yard boot by Ken Walter. And then I remember the next Ken Walter punt. But the Rams get the ball back and they go like 12 plays and it turns into a Rams punt. John Baker puts it into the back of the end zone and the Patriots get the ball. And on that ensuing drive, they have to punt again. And Ken Walter, and I'll never forget it because he shanks this punt.
Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad.
A 30-yard punt. You're up 7 points in the Super Bowl.
Might as well have gone for it.
He might as well have gone for it. And you're one of the best punters in the game. He became one of the best punters in the game at the time. Shane Leckler is still the best punter.
That ended up being a microcosm of his career, though. Ken Walter went downhill quick.
It did. He punts a 30-yard punt that goes out of bounds to the Ram 45-yard line. But not only that, on that play, thankfully it was declined. Well, obviously it was declined by the Rams because they had great field position. But Bucky Jones held on that play, and they declined it. And I remember it. And that is when that is really like the momentum turned. But at that point, that's when it was like, Jesus. All right. This is the Patriots going to be able to hold on to this, or is what Mike just said going to happen? And they're just going to beat up on us in ball game. Like, I mean, they go downfield and in 3 plays, touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
And Ricky Proehl, who has one of the greatest quotes in the Super Bowl that Bob already said, tonight is the start of a dynasty.
So that Ricky Proehl touchdown too that we just touched on, that to me was kind of a microcosm of that second half too, because the Patriots have been playing fundamental football the entire season. They didn't miss tackles. They didn't do these things. They didn't blow coverages like this. And on this play was probably one of the worst tackling experiences I've ever seen in my entire life. Ricky Proehl jukes 2 Patriots so far out of their shoes that they just left the Superdome. That dude, and of all people to do that to you, Ricky Proehl, and he ties up the Super Bowl.
And with that, I mean, I remember John Madden coming over the television saying, "Well, the field position here, like the Patriots just need to kneel it and play for overtime."
Yeah, the Patriots got the ball at their own 17.
Yeah, they got to play for
no chance.
Yeah, but that pissed me off.
Me too. It's like, you know what?
I'm like John Madden. You know what? This is. I mean, granted, I didn't know his history at the time, but I'm like, look, we're not the team that was supposed to be here. We have to look to win. It's not a matter of let's play it safe and let's just see if we can get to the $50. No, forget all that. Let's see if we can run it or we can maybe get a play downfield. I mean, Brady really wasn't a deep threat at that time. You want someone who's going to throw the ball 40 yards, but like, can we just dink and dunk to get down to maybe at least get a field goal? Because I'm like, look, you got to walk out of here by any means necessary to get a win. Like, do not play for overtime because if we go to overtime, St. Louis is going to win, and that's how I feel.
That's when, Madden wasn't the only person in the stadium that felt that way. Pat Summerall was kind of echoing his sentiments on the broadcast. And Charlie Weiss walked up to Brady and said, outlined a couple of plays, just safe throws, dink and dunk, like you just mentioned. And Brady went back to Bledsoe and said, this is what they want me to do. And Bledsoe said, F that, go out there and sling it.
Fuck that.
But look at it from the standpoint of John Madden and Pat Summerall. I mean, John Madden is arguably one of the best coaches, at least of his time. And there's a minute 37 left. You have the ball on your own 17-yard line. You have 1 timeout, and it's a tie game, and you're a 14-point underdog. I agree with all of you that they should have done what they ended up doing. But I can understand where they're coming from arguing that point and saying it, because what are the odds you're going to drive 83 yards or, what ended up happening here to get to this point? And I mean –
this is a drive that is so important that there's something where I do kind of want to go through this, and I want to look at each play that happened here. All right.
Because to piggyback off what Joe said, saying that you understood about them maybe trying to play it safe. Well, the play before the first half, that let me know right there they're looking to win this game. When you throw the touchdown to Patton, there is no, well, I'm going to play it safe. Let's just see. No, we are coming here to win. No one in this building thinks that we're going to win this game. We're gonna give it to these guys. You can't think. I mean, I'm not saying that's how you felt. I'm saying and that moment, no. You have to say, you know what? It's time to go home. We're coming back to Boston Super Bowl champions for the first time.
It's another nod to Drew Bledsoe, isn't it, Mike?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
It's
absolutely.
He walks over to his guy, little Tom Brady walks over to big brother Drew Bledsoe and says, "This is what they want me to do." And he says, "Don't listen to Dad. Go out there and win the effing game. Just win the game." And Bobby, go ahead, because I mean the first name you're going to say on play one is my unsung hero for this entire game and this entire season. And he was a guy that his career didn't go anywhere. But if he is not there, this does not happen.
Right, and even so you remember that first play. The first play is really what determined. The first three plays is what determined whether they went for this or not. So first play, Tom Brady almost gets sacked. The very first play of the drive, this dude almost gets sacked. If he goes down, that's it. We're going to overtime.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He shovels it off to J.R. Edmond. He gets 5 yards. Next play, another dump off to J.R. Edmond, 8 yards. Next play, incomplete. Almost sacked again.
But it's first down.
Right. But then the next play is honestly the play of the game. This is the most significant 11-yard dump off in the history of the NFL, because J.R. Redmond makes such an unbelievable play, something that we never really saw out of this guy. He catches a dump pass probably about 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, makes 3 Rams miss, and somehow gets from the right side hash mark, so the far hash mark, all the way over to the sideline, and somehow gets out of bounds to stop the clock. Without that play, Tom Brady doesn't go down as one of the greatest, clutchest quarterbacks in Super Bowl history.
The Patriots actually had no timeouts coming into this drive. So that makes that even more impressive, is that the fact that he had to get all the way across the field, dodge 3 defenders, and get out of bounds in order to give this team some time. And that play happened with 41 seconds left on the clock.
Right. So without that, so let's say he doesn't get out of bounds, right? By the time Brady gets up there to spike that ball, 20 seconds maybe? 15? Maybe enough time for one 15, 20-yard pass and a Hail Mary. But no, he gets out of bounds. Next play, incomplete. Then the next play is what really set it up to the point where we were like, oh, my God, this is going to happen. Troy Brown for 23 yards. There wasn't a better person on the team that I would have rather had catching that ball.
Yeah.
Troy Brown personified the Patriots, like we said. So the fact that he was that main contributor in that last drive, made that play and got them into that final field goal range, just made it even sweeter.
Well, I mean, and then you do have 2 more plays, and one of my favorite plays, it's the next one. And when you read this, when you read the box score, and this happens in baseball all the time, when you read the box score, it doesn't give you the emotion of the play. 2nd and 4, Tom Brady spikes the ball. It is the hardest you will ever see any quarterback spike the ball into a turf field in the history of football. And if you haven't seen it and you're listening to this, go back and watch it.
Doesn't he catch it?
He spikes it so hard. He catches it. But the magic of that play is the amount of confidence that not only he has in himself, and it was kind of an FU to Charlie Weiss and John Madden, who he didn't hear say what John Madden said, but it was a vote of confidence into one of the best kickers of all time in the NFL. It was 17-17, and you just set up Adam Vinatieri for a 48-yard field goal in a dome. With that, and I look back on that spike and how hard he spiked it, and he caught it, and that's the biggest vote of confidence anyone will ever give a player on their team in the history of sports, in my opinion.
You know, and as soon as we'll just go right to it. As soon as he touched that ball, that was one of the most beautiful and perfect field goals I've ever. It couldn't have split those uprights more. And in that moment of first championship glory that we've all felt. And the Patriots are Super Bowl champions. That tone, that call is something that to this day it'll randomly just pop into my head. And it's just like the feeling that it left you with the first time in our entire lives, guys, we were champions.
We were, and that's what started the whole, Bobby, I remember it too. And what was amazing about this was we were so high up in the Superdome that a kick didn't even reach us. We were looking down on kicks. It was insane. And watching that kick go through the uprights and seeing my father, who had been a fan of this team for 42 years, had invested so much time and money into this team for the last 20 years, it just to see him cry at the fact that the Patriots won the Super Bowl. And if you're listening, Dad, sorry about that. But to see him, that might have been the first time I had seen the man, or at least recognized that I had seen the man cry. And it meant so much to him. And that's how I knew it meant so much to me. Watching the New England Patriots hoist the trophy, I mean, it was the greatest moment for me that we will talk about on this podcast for the next 11 episodes after this. I mean, it was just absolute euphoria. It's
the only word.
And it didn't feel real at first. And I have one last story, but now that we've talked about it.
Yeah, Mike, what were your memories of this? Because if there's three Patriots fans that I know more than that, bigger Patriots fans that I know, is you three right here. So you three having the perspective of being these lifelong Patriots fans, going through all this, how did you feel when that went through?
Yeah, so for me, this is I think the word euphoric is the perfect word to say. I mean, unreal. I had watched probably every Patriots game since I think 1994 that I can remember, right? Because I'm sure it was on before that, but I don't actually remember it until I remember Bledsoe, Coates, and then when they drafted Terry Glenn in '96. I'd watch every game with my dad, and my dad actually passed away in the spring of 2001, so he never saw them win a championship.
That's
so
right.
For me to just be there at 12 or 13 years old and see it happen, it's like, oh my God! It hits me now. It's like there are people that waited all their life, 70 years, 80 years, 90, and never saw it. And we were all 11, 12, 13, 14 in that age range, and there it was. And so it was just one of those moments. I'll always remember where I was, who I was with, and what it sounded like in the room that I was in when that kick went through.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't have such a sweet story to tell about that. I remember my mom, I'm going nuts in the house, and my mom was like, "Yes, they won. Get your clothes out. Get ready for school tomorrow." And I was just like, I don't care about school right now. Like, oh my God, we're world champions. But I thought about my grandmother though, because my grandmother was more so like a baseball fanatic than anything else. But I remember her saying, because she was, that was 02, so she was 78 at the time. Yeah, she was 78. And I remember her saying, she was like, because she was born in 1924. So she was like, I never thought I would see a Boston team win a championship. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, I have a better story for when, 04.
04?
So, but that was the whole different thing. But that day she was like, I never thought I'd see a Boston team win. I mean, she saw the Celtics, but she was like, she didn't care too much basketball. But she was like, I didn't think after the 60s we would see another team win. She remembered 75. She remembered 86. Even with the Red Sox stuff, she remembered 95, 98, 99, 2003. So, that's before then. But, yeah, it was just crazy.
And you're right. That's what made this so special, because I had the same type of story with my grandmother, where my grandmother, I didn't get along much with my grandmother growing up. I didn't always think she was the nicest lady in the world. But if there's one thing that I've ever heard joy come out of her mouth, is when the Patriots won that Super Bowl. She called my mom and left the happiest voicemail on her answering machine that I've ever heard anyone. It just was ecstatic screams for about 20 seconds, and then just was, we won, I can't believe it, we actually won. And that was the feeling across the entire state and across the entire region, and honestly across the entire country, because we were America's team at this point. Everyone was rooting for us. No one thought we could do it. Guess what? We did.
Well, we unseated the Kings in a lot of ways. I mean, the Rams had won in 99. They were the greatest show on turf. I mean, you don't get a nickname if it doesn't work. The Steel Curtain, the Purple People Eaters, the greatest show on turf. I mean, it just doesn't happen, right? So the Patriots come in here, and it literally starts in week 2. Like, it started in week 1, as Bobby said. I mean, they lose, and it's like, that's it. And then in week 2. One of the highest paid players in the NFL goes down because he gets smoked by Mo Lewis. And little did we know that Mo Lewis now deserves a Super Bowl ring. And the season is still rocky for a couple weeks. And then it gets to that San Diego game, and you're like, all right, there's something happening here. And then it gets to the St. Louis game, and you're like, man, that's a great team, and we only lost by 7. And then you're blowing everybody out, and you blow everybody out after that St. Louis game. And then you get to John Gruden's Raiders, and there's just – you don't stand a chance. You don't stand a chance against that team, and yet you win the game. And then you go to Pittsburgh, and they've already booked their hotel. Their families are coming down. They're going, and they're already in New Orleans, and you beat them. And then you get to hoist the Lamar Hunt Trophy on their field. And then you get to New Orleans against St. Louis, and they've already got their parade set up and scheduled for the next Tuesday, and you beat them. And it's like nobody – this is why the Patriots to this day – play the underdog card. It's why Bill Belichick plays it, and it's why he's such a mastermind, because this season right here, and I think it's safe to say, no matter who I'm talking to in this room, that this is, as a New England sports fan, this is the one that not only started it all, but that we remember the most.
Yeah.
I just remember at the end of the game, walking out, and the last story I have from this day is walking out, and those same guys in the camper next to us who were basically from the same town Craig and I are from, and walking out, and they're absolutely smashed. They're out of their mind. I mean, their team just won the Super Bowl, and they've been drinking for God knows how long, and we get back. And one of the guys says to my dad, "You guys coming to Bourbon Street with us?" I was 13 years old. I said yes, by the way. I was like, hell yeah, I've heard about Bourbon Street. I'm going. And my dad was like, no, man, he's 13. Like, we're going to.
If I was your dad, I would have been like, hell yeah, we're going to Bourbon Street.
I know, right? But would we have ever, I look back on it and go, this was an experience I may never experience again. I know so many people that have been to all the Patriots Super Bowls and everything else. And I think that's what makes it special for me, is that it was the first one that I had been to. It was the first one they had ever won. And it was against this great team after coming off a Super Bowl 5 years earlier where they just got their teeth kicked in. And I just, Rayshawn, I mean, that's still a good story, man. And I mean, Bob, we all have those stories around these big moments. And I mean, Mike, I mean, that story is almost bigger for you than it is for any of us. I mean, when you lose somebody so close and then your team that you followed with them, it's like you can't help but wonder, Right. And it's just, it's amazing. It really is amazing what sports does. And we could stay on this call for 3 more hours and give Craig 17 more episodes. Leave that part in.
Just based off this. Yeah.
Just based off this is just the feelings you felt, man. And I just, I'm so glad we're doing this for this reason, to bring these memories up. And I don't even know. I'm speechless. Second time.
This time it's not even technical related. It's crazy.
It's not. Leave that in, Craig.
All right, just because, I do want to kind of get our final thoughts on here, finally wrap this up. You know what I mean? Because, 2001, like we all said, it is the most memorable of all, just because it was the first. That's why it's most memorable for me, not because of what it meant. It doesn't have that deep meaning that it has for you guys, which is amazing, which is why this podcast exists, exactly for those stories, which is why I was so excited to do this. But this stands out to me just because it really was that first moment where, as a young sports fan, I was like, wow, this is what it feels like to be a champion. This feeling right here is something that I want to happen so much. And the funniest part about it is, like, yes, it happened a lot, but I'll never forget my dad looking at me after they won. I was like, Dad, I can't wait to do this again. And he looks at me and goes, probably going to have to wait a long time.
I had the exact same conversation.
Dad, how wrong you were. All right. So wrong. In fact, we're going to have about 12 more episodes to tell you about it.
Yeah, I think just looking at this entire season, I think the personal stories that we all just kind of told, especially like in the moment when they won, just does a great job in terms of buttoning up the entire thing, right? Like, the country was in mourning, right? Mm-hmm. There was just this, and there's never been since then the type of unity that there was in a country since, like, after 9/11. Those months after it, like, everyone felt like they were part of one team. I think it just happened to be the Patriots that encapsulated that in the sport. Like, there was not one player on that team that was more important than the other. And I think that, whether it's you're the highest paid quarterback in the league, going out with an injury and then stepping aside and just making the transition easier for Tom, coming in and throwing that touchdown pass in the AFC title game, and then just encouraging him in the Super Bowl. There's moments like that happen so frequently for that team in that year that it could have only been the Patriots that won that year, and it should have only been them. And I can't. I'm so happy we did this too, because looking back on it, man, like, it's just such a moment in time in all of our lives differently, right? That again, still 20 years later is uniting. So I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, because like you said, about how the country was in mourning. I remember when that stuff happened with 9/11. Being in the sixth grade, and so just to see kind of like how the country came together as one, how that Patriot team came as one. I think from a sentimental standpoint, I think it's the most memorable. There's other shows that we'll do this time that throughout this podcast that mean more to me personally, because of what happened, after or before. Mm-hmm. But it's just from what it meant from a national standpoint. There's no other show that we'll do that will encapsulate the moment that we had, or the moment that we felt, I should say, when that field goal goes through, for the first time hearing, like I said, in our lifetimes, that a team that we root for, that we love so much, became the world champions, and there was no one better than us.
Right. The first time is always the most memorable. Usually feels the best too. Joe, go ahead. I know you were there. You experienced it firsthand, man. So if there's final thoughts, I want to finish up with, it's you, man. Go right ahead.
It was such a different time in our country and in sports, wasn't it? We were just kids at the time, but looking back on it, it was such a different period of our lives. 20 years ago, it's in a lot of ways, that's 25% of our lives, the last 20 years. And being there, having that opportunity, sharing it with, here we go. Hang on a second.
Hold him back.
It's tickling the throat. Sharing it with somebody that means so much to me. Ray, I hope you cry on another podcast. God, I hope you cry on another podcast. But just being with somebody that
This is why, ladies and gentlemen.
This is it.
This is the exact reason why this podcast exists, because emotions like this don't happen without sports. They don't happen without championships. Joe, man, believe me, we all feel exactly how you feel right now, man. We know.
I'll wrap up my thoughts with Tom Brady on the podium getting the Lombardi trophy and being named Super Bowl MVP. And he looks at Drew Bledsoe with his hands on his head, and he says, "Craig, you can bleep this out if you want. We fucking won. Like, we fucking won, man. Like, that is so powerful. Like, that, man, I could get into so many thoughts about Tom Brady in this, but I'm not going to, because we're gonna stay where we are in the capsule of 2001. But man, that guy looked up so much to number 11, and number 11 helped him so much. And you know, for him to defy what their coaches say in the Super Bowl to go and win that damn game, I mean, dude, that's just it just
special.
That's
special.
Sports, man. That's special.
Yeah.
Like,
special.
No other team has done that. No other. This, you know what? And I'll throw it out there. There's only one other team I can think of. Maybe the 13 Red Sox that we'll talk about when we get there. But the 2008 Celtics. I mean, I think those were the other two where you can have this kind of emotion. This one just it's different than all of them, and I can ramble and I can go around in circles, and Craig can edit out whatever the hell he wants. But man, this is just it. When you share it with somebody that special to you, and see that game happen in front of you, man, it's what the last 20 years was all about. And man, share it with everybody you love. Just share it, man. Share sports. God, Bobby, I hope the Cowboys win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's honestly.
I gotta make a joke to bring me back. All right, we're good.
Yeah, so honestly, that what you're feeling right there is exactly why A, this podcast exists, and B, why I just want the Cowboys to go to one damn Super Bowl. All right, so on that note, exactly. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, that'll finally wrap up part 1 and 2 of the first episode of the Sunday Night Sports Wrap Championship ReWrap. For Joe Melkin, Mike Marcangelo, Rayshon Buchanan, and the greatest producer ever, Craig D'Alessandro, I'm the real BK, Bob Kelly. We'll see you next time. Keep winning those championships, ladies and gentlemen.
This concludes episode 1 of the New England Championship ReWrap. Tune in next time as we revisit and relive the second title that helped build the dynasty, the 2003 New England Patriots. The show notes and transcript of today's episode can be found in the description box below, as well as our WordPress and Buzzsprout pages. If this is your first time finding us, please consider subscribing. It's the easiest way to see when we publish new episodes. We are on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to rate us and leave a review of any of our shows. We always appreciate the feedback. Follow us on social media. All of our links will be in the show notes. For Bob Kelly, Joe Malkin, Michael Marcangelo, and Rayshon Buchanan, I'm Craig D'Alessandro. Thanks for listening.
Miles, are you ready to record our promo for Season 2 of the Wanna Bet podcast?
David, have you ever seen a grown man naked?
Miles, we're not here to quote lines from Airplane. We're here to tell people that Season 2 starts August 18th.
But I like Airplane.
I know you do, but Wanna Bet is a sports betting podcast. Each week we bet $1,000 on the NFL teams and games that we love.
Well, that sounds like fun.
It is fun. And last year you picked over 60% of your games correctly.
How'd you do?
We're not talking about that. We are telling people that they can find us every Friday. So no more movie quotes.
Roger.
Electricast.
Are you passionate about saving the planet for future generations? Do you want to learn how to do it? If yes, then you need to tune in to the Nature Back podcast. It's a talk show covering the changing world around us, from renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, circular economy, to ESG and social innovation. Don't miss this opportunity to discover how you can join the movement and make a difference. Subscribe to the NatureBack podcast today on your favorite platform and get ready to be amazed.
Electricast.